Welcome back to Open BXRx. Following what we all know happened on Fordham Road, the Third Avenue bid began implementing strategies to protect businesses along the bustling commercial shopping district. And with these recent events, business improvement districts are between businesses and protesters. Joining us now is Michael Brady, Executive Director of the Third Avenue bid. Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
The first thing I want to address, Michael, is can you answer to the accusations of the people stating that the Third Avenue bid coordinated with the NYPD on Third Avenue, which led to the mass arrest of protesters? I would just like to clarify that the protests that began on Third Avenue were nonviolent for the audience.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me, and thank you also for noting that it was nonviolent. Yesterday's protest at the Hub was very similar to the protest that took place on Saturday, and it was a peaceful protest. To clarify things, and I know that anything I say right now will be interpreted as being the wrong thing to say. But I can only say what is in the heart of our board of directors, the heart of our businesses, and the folks that we serve, and state the facts. Third Avenue bid does not have the authority or the power to call up 250 NYPD officers. That is a fact. To lay out the facts of what transpired yesterday was very similar to what transpired on Saturday. We received an early morning notice from the NYPD stating that there would be a movement or an action at the Hub. And we have an emergency preparedness protocol internally at the organization that is directly tied to strategic planning and directly tied to just public safety. That includes, alerting store owners of the protest or of the public action, and then also encouraging store owners, if there is violence, to have their own emergency protocols in place, such as shutting down security gates, if needed, board up windows, as we saw on Fordham Road, anything that they would do to protect their small businesses. As a result of what happened on Fordham Road, Diaz removed all the waste receptacles from 3rd Avenue and 149th Street. That's something that Diaz did, not the bid. If anything, we had to deploy more sanitation crews because the garbage was now being thrown on the ground instead of in garbage cans. But I want to iterate that I know nothing that I say right now will be correct, but I do want folks to know that bids, by and large, particularly 3rd Avenue bid, we do not have the power to call one police plaza and say, please deploy 250 officers. We just don't. We've worked very closely with NYPD in their role to protect small businesses on the district. And we've worked very closely in trying to create an environment where we can better police and community relationships, whether that's by participating in the Build a Block program or hosting conversations about NYPD, substance use disorder, our LGBT community. The Third Avenue bid has been a convener in that. But to say that the Third Avenue bid coordinated the NYPD's presence at the Hub is just emphatically false. And I know there will be a lot of people that disagree with that statement, but those are the facts.
And Michael, when we talk about the aftermath of the protest on Third Avenue, what happened? What did the bid see after arriving on scene?
Sure. So the protest at Third Avenue was largely peaceful. And just to let folks know, the Third Avenue Business Improvement District goes from 148th Street to 153rd Street along Third Avenue. So for what we saw in our district, everything was largely peaceful. To my understanding, the events last night transpired around 136th Street and Brook Avenue, not in the district, but that is not an excuse for us not to have an opinion on that. I think any use of police force in terms of batons, bicycles, any of the police tactics that, quite frankly, I don't know all police tactics. In that situation, I don't think was positive. It escalated the situation. Very, very similar to, I think, the curfew escalates situations. And the events that transpired on 136th Street and Brook certainly did not need to transpire that way. I think we saw a large police force that was much larger than the protest group. And from what I've heard from NYPD, they had a large police force on hand because they thought that the protest group could swell to about 1,500 people. That's what I've heard in the briefings this morning. I have yet to corroborate that, but that's what I was told this morning.
Right. And when we talk about your position, Michael, navigating between protecting small businesses and also protecting commuters that come by and forth Third Avenue, what can you tell me about the challenges you face with that?
Yeah, at the heart of what a business improvement district is, and I say that Third Avenue is not your atypical bid, but at the heart of what we do is we protect small businesses. And Third Avenue is a mix of mom and pop shops and destination retail. So we have a Marshalls, we have a Burlington, but we also have Yvette's Jewelers. We also have Youngland. We also have Cookies, folks that have been around for 20, 30 years on the avenue. And by and large, the role of the Third Avenue bid is to serve those small businesses. Because quite frankly, the larger franchises, the Foot Lockers, the Marshalls, the Burlingtons, while they are members of our commercial corridor, they're part of large conglomerates that really don't make much use of Third Avenue bid services outside of keeping the sidewalks clean. So, in terms of our role, our role fundamentally is the traditional bid axiom of clean, safe, and beautiful. Third Avenue bid rolls out other programs such as substance use disorder programs, coalition building programs, LGBTQ programs, anti-displacement work. We do this, and I know there will be probably a lot of your listeners who say, well, that's very disingenuous. It's the white guy saying this. And I get that. I'm going to own my white privilege, and yes, I get that. But I'm also owning my ability to keep my mouth shut and also listen to figure out a path forward that's focused on race, equity, and justice, and know that I may not have a role in that, and that's fine. There are lots of other folks who do have a role in that, and we are open, we are listening, and we are eager to participate in creating a path forward. And to that end, we've been very vocal about supporting a repeal of 50A. We've been very vocal about seeing a reduction in NYPD budgets, and we're being very vocal about participating in a coalition of grassroots organizations to help drive this conversation around equity and justice.
Right. Thank you, Michael. Now, before the looting started, my co-producer Franchesca reached out to DCPI, the Public Information Department of NYPD, for anyone who's not familiar, to inquire about crime during COVID-19. According to them, crime for the most part has decreased during COVID in the Bronx, but commercial burglary is rampantly surging. Small merchants and bodegas and restaurants are being hit hard. How have businesses on Third Avenue been affected before all of the looting started in Fordham?
Sure. I think that this is part of a global challenge, right? People are home for 3 months. They're out of work. They're hungry. Third Avenue bid has participated in providing over 1 million meals to Bronxites. Things are ridiculously hard for people right now. People can't pay their rent. So when we look at the types of crimes that have increased, it makes a lot of sense that petty theft, shoplifting, stealing juice from a bodega, all of that is occurring because of the severe disenfranchisement and inequity in our community. We've been very vocal about speaking to redlining, speaking to disenfranchisement, and highlighting that. And when we look at this uptick in crime, Third Avenue has seen it. Our grocery stores, people don't have access to resources. And I think that just highlights the fact that we're still in a tale of two cities city. And we need to do a lot more work, and we need to be a lot better to address that. We can't just address it with words. We have to address it with actions. I'm well aware of that. And we're going to be working towards that.
Right. And one of the things I know you championed for, Michael, was the 1% small business loans that came to the Bronx. You urged for it to be a little higher. I mean, we don't know why the Bronx was last in receiving these funds or why we received so little. Can you talk about that as well? That's another fear and challenge that Bronx businesses face, especially small minority-owned businesses.
Sure. We were disgusted that 1% of city funds went to the Bronx in the forms of loans or grants as part of the COVID-19 relief effort. And we've since worked with New York City Department of Small Business Services on ways to increase their reach in the community, but also in terms of ways of just approaching equitable resources and fund distribution. In tandem with that, we've also worked with philanthropic partners, local elected officials, and community-based organizations to create the Bronx Community Relief Effort, which is a $10 million fund to deploy resources very strategically throughout the borough. And as a result of that, Roughly $1.5 million worth in grants are being deployed, grant money, not loans, grant funding, grants to small businesses throughout the borough, of which, as of today, $100,000 is earmarked towards the businesses on 170th and Burnside, who were impacted not only from COVID-19, but also looting and rioting. We found that a lot of businesses, particularly our mom and pops, their insurance may have lapsed during COVID-19 because they missed a payment. So normally an insurance company would cover a burglary or a break-in, but if your insurance has lapsed, that coverage doesn't exist. So we're going to be deploying those resources as early as Monday.
Right. And when we talk about these minority-owned businesses, they've been suffering with loss of income since before COVID-19 and during the shutdown. Now, the city is expected to open in phases on June 8th, first phase. What type of businesses will be open on 3rd Avenue?
Sure. So 3rd Avenue will have some limited retail, people who are offering curbside service. But I think this also underscores the inequity in the borough, and one of the reasons why those grants and loans didn't reach our borough. We have a vast digital divide among small businesses. So, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, well, they can just order it online and pick it up at the store. That's not quite how things work on 3rd Avenue right now. We're working towards getting there, but we also have to address structural issues. For example, like if you're going to open up an e-commerce platform, chances are you want to be affiliated with Amazon Marketplace. Because it opens your business up to such a large quantity of clientele. However, Amazon Marketplace charges about a 40 or 50% commission on sales that go through their portal. So we're working with the city council on ways that we might be able to put a cap on that. So small businesses, particularly our smallest businesses, I think of, Solly at Yvette's Jeweler or Roger at Home Goods, how they can compete but not lose such an enormous revenue margin by going to the e-commerce route. And also this is about neighborhood stabilization. We're hearing from scientists and the Surgeon General that there will be a second wave of the pandemic. How do we prevent that from destabilizing our neighborhood and local economies yet again? And what safeguards can we put in place to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Right. Thank you, Michael. I'm not sure if this forum passed already, but the Reopening, Recovery, and Opportunity Forum was coming up in partnership with the 3rd Avenue bid. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we're going through kind of in the weeds on, here are the tips for reopening. Anything from having your reopening plan on file so if New York City Department of Health comes by, you'll be in compliance, to other things like managing the city's open space plan to allow restaurants, bars, express food services to have more space, be it on the sidewalks or in the streets, to make sure that they can make up for that revenue gap. A lot of food service industries operate at a very small fraction of profit. When you reduce their capacity to, let's say, 20, 30, or 40%, that very small revenue margin pretty much vanishes. So, opening up more access to open space is kind of a crucial element of that. But, in long term, we have to think of how we're going to do this in a world where we have insane real estate taxes, which, that impacts the rent. When we don't have equitable city services in commercial corridors like 3rd Avenue bid, where we're constantly fighting for, routine sanitation pickups, all of these other things that help us create a clean, safe, and inviting community that can support the local economy. And I know a lot of folks are going to say, yes, shop local, yes, do this. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of those local businesses, they need more than just that one $30 purchase or that one $20 purchase or that one $1.10 coffee. They need to start seeing some major support from the community. If not, they will have to go by way of e-commerce, particularly in a global pandemic.
And one last thing, Michael, before you go, just some resources for businesses right now in regards to broken windows or gates, anything that they suffer through any looting that happens. Can you just give us some info?
Sure, absolutely. So if you've experienced any of that, please go to www.thebronx.org. That will connect you to the Bronx Community Relief Effort. We will begin deployment of the grant link should go live on Monday. Funds should be deployed within 2 or 3 days. It's a rapid response element. And then for any long-term questions that you might have about emergency services from SBS or emergency bid services, please feel free to email me at mbrady at thirdavenuebid.org. That's THIRD Avenue AVENUE bid.org. And we'll be happy to either provide the services or connect you with the appropriate party for those services.
Michael, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Folks, Open BXRx will be right back.